Our guest today is a fresh new voice in young adult literature in India. His debut book, Giants, won the Children's Fiction Prize at the Attagalata Bangalore Literary Festival. With his writing, he hopes to apprehend the liminal spaces where symbols speak more powerfully than literal words and meanings. He grew up in Nagaland but spent a good 10 years in Delhi. His primary areas of interest are identity, voice, and the intersection of the everyday with the various aspects of myth and imagination. Welcome, Huthuka Sumi.
Lovely to be doing this with you. Thank you so much.
So, can you start by telling us about your new book, Giants?
Thanks, Madhumita. So, the book Giants is a young adult book, but it has layers of meanings in it. So, on the surface, it's about a 13-year-old boy who has no voice, literally, and somehow he must become the storyteller for the fabulous creatures found in the folklores. So this is a book about, on the surface, it's about finding your voice, finding your identity. Deeper, this is a book about issues concerning minorities assimilating with the majority, and about how we must find a path of peace, a path of hope towards it here.
In the story, you've woven a lot of traditional Naga folk tales as part of the story. Why did you do that, and can you talk a little bit about what were your inspirations?
All right. So, with regards to books coming out of the Northeast, there is a preconceived expectation that it will most likely have to do with either folklores or conflict. You know what I'm saying? So I wanted to turn this on its head and subvert it by using folktales, but these aren't folktales as you know them. I use the creatures, the beings from our folktales, but everything else is imagination. There's just one tale here that is a real folktale. Everything else is my imagination. So I decided to subvert this whole expectation by taking it, but giving the reader something completely different. And also our folktales are so rich. We come from an oral tradition. So while I wanted to distinguish myself from, the folktale space, I also wanted to assert my identity. And there's no better way to do this than through the folktales.
Absolutely. So in a way, would you say the portrayal of Northeast itself in popular culture, in a way, kind of pushed you towards choosing what you wanted to write?
Absolutely. Yes, very much so. And this is not coming from the point of a pushback or a conflict, but this was a very personal choice to take this route here.
Also, interestingly, the story is set in pre-independent India. So why did you choose this setting, and how did it lend to the plot or what you wanted to convey through the story?
So, in the context of the Nagas, my people, the 40s represented a very crucial period in our history. Education was just coming into the mountains, and we were on the cusp of modernity. But we still had so much of the old ways then. And I'm a huge fan of Gabriel Márquez, and I like how he intersects real history with his metaphors and his symbols. And I found no better way to do this, to force change on my protagonist than to take an actual event from history, which is the Second World War and the coming of modernity to our mountains. So that's why I chose this.
Interesting. And this is also your debut book, right? And why did you choose young adult literature as a medium to debut with this story, and why particularly magical realism?
Thank you. Growing up as a young boy in Nagaland, my fondest memories are of hiding away in my college library with a J.K. Rowling book, because they wouldn't allow us to take these imported versions back home. And you have to remember that then, when I was growing up, books they weren't as available as they are now. So what I would do is I would hide myself away from the librarian so that they wouldn't find me. I would stay beyond the limit so that I could finish the J.K. Rowling book. The Lord of the Rings. Yeah, Tolkien, right. Forgive the brave heart. Yeah, Tolkien. So for me, when I decided I wanted to write something, do a first book, I wanted to write something that a 13-year-old me would want to read. because I feel that all of us carry the inner child within us till the day we die. And some of us they thrive, and some of us lock them away forever. So I wanted to write a book that the 13-year-old me would want to read. Yeah.
And would you say Tolkien has been one of your biggest inspirations?
Absolutely, yeah.
Did you also anticipate how easy or difficult, or it would be to write a young adult fiction? Because writing for an age that we are not in anymore, it's completely different, and certain ideas need to be conveyed in a different way, right? Did you anticipate that? Or is that why, how did you go about that?
I sort of understood my brief, my assignment, but as a debut writer, I wasn't prepared for how far I had to go. Because you have to do a lot of self-censoring, as you know. If I wrote an adult book, it would be completely different. I had to be very mindful of my reader. So I had to literally teach myself on the job how to do this, yeah.
Just coming back to the story, right? Your protagonist, Kato, is mute, and his role is ironically that of a keeper of stories, right? The collector of stories. So did you intentionally set out to, define the character that way?
Lovely question again. And I returned home a very angry young man for some reason. And I don't blame it on Delhi completely. A lot of it has to do with our history. I was so angry, so much so that I ended up in a jail cell, in a literal jail cell, after picking a fight with some policemen. And that was my moment of truth. And I decided, am I really speaking in my real voice, or am I letting my anger overwhelm me? And is it my anger speaking instead of me, the real me? And that took me on a journey. And I finally understood that your real voice has nothing to do with the facade that you put on. It is who you actually are. And so many of us go through life without ever discovering our real voice. So I wanted to take on the concept of a voice because of that, yeah.
Very interesting. And also you had a different voice prior to writing this. Like you have a background in photography, and you have seen things through a lens, right? That is also in a way, capturing stories, or, as a keeper of stories, so to speak. So did your background in photography kind of influence how you describe a certain setting in the story, or a certain character, the way they look and emote?
Yeah. I've always had an overactive imagination. So it was only later on in life that I discovered that not everyone can do what I could do, in the sense that till way into my 20s, I could control my dreams. In my dreams, I could take control, and I could do whatever I wanted. I could tell that I was in a dream, and I could start flying if I wanted to. And so this hyper-imagination took me to photography. So it's not photography really that gave me this way of looking at life or at writing. It's just who I was born to be, I suppose I would say. Yeah.
So finally, as a debut author, how would you define success?
When your books really mean something to start meaning something to your readers, and they come to you and tell you that it made them weep because it helped them resolve some issues, I feel that you've started making an impact. And very thankfully, I've been very lucky to have that experience with this book. Yeah.
Thank you so much for joining us at Bookscape and talking about your new debut book, and we wish you all success.
Thank you so much, Madhurika.